All right, go ahead and call the meeting to order.
Hey, would those who wish please rise and remove any unofficial headgear for the presentation of the colors. Color guard, attention. Color guard, advance. Color guard, cross the colors. Post the flag of the state of Maine. Says the flag of the United States of America. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 2, post the flag of the United States of America. Guard, reassemble. Color guard, retreat. At ease. Thank you. Okay, good job. Back to the cafeteria.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Special guest presentation of the colors from Cub Scout Pack 47. We're they meet in the cafeteria when we don't have, or in the library when we don't have board meetings. So we thought it'd be nice to have an interaction. So moving on to the agenda, several proposed agenda adjustments. Adding an item 10A, which would be about moving the budget meeting one day forward, and adding item 8BI, which is a new course approval request. Is there a second for those changes?
Second.
Discussion or other proposed changes? Looks like we have remote participation, so everything will be a roll call. Jake, your vote?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Noah?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Agenda changes carry. I would make a motion to approve the minutes from March 12th as presented. Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion or questions or corrections? We'll go ahead and vote. Jake?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Noah?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Minutes are adopted. I would make a motion to approve regular warrant 19, payroll warrant 19, and capital improvement reserve warrant 7. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? We'll go ahead and vote. Jake?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Noah?
Aye.
I also vote aye. The warrants are approved. The floor is now open for public comment. The full instructions are there, but I don't see anybody who hasn't been here before. Would anybody like to make a public comment? Seeing no public comment, we'll go ahead and move on to acknowledgements. Jake?
Nothing at this time.
Don't think I have anything. Kevin?
Nothing at this time. Thank you. Nothing. Thank you.
Noah?
I guess I do have an acknowledgement. Lisa Earhart ran the ambassadors program down at ACE the first time, and I know we had some participation, and it was just really a lot of wonderful glowing happiness that came out of that, and good communication with the students and like the new incoming families, and it was just really great to see that program and the outreach happening. So really happy for that. Thanks.
Thank you. Student reps, I'm guessing you were saving it for the report, but do you have anything at this time? Okay. Meredith?
I would just like to acknowledge Susan for it was a busy week of professional development last week with an early release day, and then 2 days later a full day PD day for staff, and so it was just two very well planned and executed days. So thank you, Susan, for that bringing that for us.
Great, thank you. Move on to reports. Lisa. Oops, you're still muted.
You're muted, Lisa.
Of course I am.
Just mute her.
I probably muted her. All right.
Okay, am I back?
You're back.
Am I here for real? Wonderful. We got a letter of resignation from Rose Pompey, our MLL teacher. Makes us very sad. She was a wonderful addition, but she is doing what she needs to do for herself. We're hoping, we've had an ad out. We've had a few applicants. I'm hoping I can get a member of the board to be on that interview committee. If anybody's interested, let me know. We're racing through evaluations. We've had 87 evaluations so far this year. We are in the process of completing 31 of those. The others have been completed. 20 initial referrals so far this year. We have kids that just keep coming in, moving into the district with IEPs. It's just never quiet. I guess that's the best way of putting it. Looking at next year, we know that we have at least 5 students coming in with IEPs in kindergarten alone, but we also have several students in our own pre-K that are not yet identified that are looking like they may need some support. We are starting to look at summer programming, looking at caseload management for next year. We're hearing from staff that want to work for the summer. So it's just constantly moving. One of the things that my scheduler told me is that we've already had at least 200 meetings this year, and that's just IEP meetings. That's not 504s or all of the other additional meetings that we have throughout the day. And I asked her that, you know, if she could please refrain from ever telling me that number again, I would be happy with that. And that's it for my report. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? We'll go ahead and move on. Director of Learning, Susan.
Yeah, I'd like to actually start with an accommodation. I think the NEASC team, particularly Meredith Diamond and Jen Branchflower and Margie Innes, did an excellent job of organizing not only the visit for that team, but the documentation so that the group really had a wonderful perception of the work that's happening at OHS and was able to share that in their sort of informal feedback session this afternoon. And lots of accommodations for OHS and the work across the district as well. And the recommendations were, I think, very reasonable and things that we're already working on. So that was really a heartwarming, sort of proud moment, I think, for the staff that was there this afternoon to see that and hear that feedback from folks. And I'm really looking forward to the draft report. So that comes sometime in the next month or two. So, sort of shifting gears, the curriculum committee met last week, I think it was, between those 2 PD days. And part of that time was to take a look at the extended learning opportunities as a half-credit elective course for our students here at OHS in connection with the Jobs for Maine Grads, JMG. I think that really provides a great opportunity for students to have some experiences off campus and as opposed to sort of a traditional work study program that basically counts hours that students are having career exploration opportunities. This ELO opportunity really combines that experience along with some learning how to talk to your boss about difficult conversations, and really ties the learning higher metacognition thoughts to that. So that's on the docket for later on in the agenda. Thank you very much for adding that tonight. And then the other thing the curriculum committee did was provide some feedback to the health curriculum documents that we have. And we'll be going back to add some more explicit information to the sexuality education pieces of those documents and what we teach our kids. A little bit more about nutritional drink, or not nutritional, energizer drinks and how they're not nutritional. And I think some about body piercings and tattoos and the risks there. So it'll take a little while to get that work done, but I think our curriculum and what we deliver to students will be better for it. So to be coming back to the full board in the next couple of months. Let's see. In my report, I also mentioned the DEI and the work's being done there. If you haven't had a chance to look at the notes that I linked to my report, I think it's worth seeing the progress that was made and kind of fun to read about what's happening as Noah mentioned in the student and family ambassador round, particularly, as well as the SSPs. There's really some neat work happening there. And the other piece that I have for you tonight is just hopefully a fairly quick summary of the feedback from the Friday's Professional Development Day. About a third of the people that participated also filled out the feedback form. So I'd like to say a little more. I might do one more push, but I think the group was pretty representative of the three buildings, as well as the roles, particularly teachers and ed techs. About 56% of the participants rated the day as satisfactory as a 4 or 5 on a scale from 1 to 5, and about another 33% rated it as a 3. So overall, skewed to the right, which is good to see. Also, the session with Kat Biddle around trauma responsive and healing approaches to some things and some strategies that we could use in our district. That was much more skewed to the right. So about 76% of the participants rated that as a 4 or 5. So that was also really good to see. I would say the negative or cooler type of feedback was that some people still really would like some time to do work and catch up on work rather than have professional development. So there's a few people still expressing that desire. There were some comments about the length of the day and that one of the presenters was by Zoom, and that was harder for folks. On the positive side, I'd say that people really felt that the self-care, personal well-being, and filling one's own cup was something that led them to a more effective educator, and they could see the connections between the things we were doing for staff well-being and how that would translate to student well-being. The regulated classroom was a big session that seemed popular and one that people would like to learn more about. Let's see. Lots of appreciation for the hands-on and engaging activities like the escape room, restorative circles, things that provided people a chance for collaboration, and then things that they could collaborate and enjoy together that they could then translate back into their classrooms was something that was really noted as well. And they'd like more of that. And thinking forward to next year, some of the suggestions were cultural awareness and understanding, continue that thread, particularly in regards to Wabanaki culture, and continue to offer practical skills like CPR and AED. That session got full both times, and so did the escape room. So it was some really good things for us to think about, I think, as we proceed to the next professional development opportunities. And that's it for my report.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, just, I know we have conversations on the board about the, various ways we get time for professional development, but whether it's paying for days or early release days, but it's nice to hear about what's happening and how it's furthering the district vision. So thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to the student representative board report.
We're very excited. We have a couple of weeks worth of things to cover. So to start off in school culture, Winter Carnival went well last week. Congratulations to the juniors on their win. Thank you to all the students who met with the NEASC representatives this week. The school is having a mental health day on the 29th of March. We're all very excited about that.
The annual OHS semi-formal was last Thursday and it was a smashing success.
The middle school had its semi-formal 2 Fridays ago.
The ASA dance was also a huge success. Thank you to the PTO.
The ultimate riot competition was so much fun and raised over $1,000 for the senior class. Congratulations to Ashton Duran and Caden Gray for their joint win.
The OHS Key Club extended its Souls for Souls shoes drive last Thursday and got many donations for a good cause.
The NAHS happened last week. Congratulations to all new inductees. It was so lovely hearing all the ways that art mattered to the members.
OHS Spirit Week was last week and it started very strong with the senior staff basketball game last Monday. Congratulations to the seniors.
Congratulations to the OHS Jazz Band on their gold win at States.
For academics, congrats to all students with the visual SAT today.
Quarter 3 ends for the high school on the 29th of March.
ASA report cards go home next week, and best of luck to all elementary school teachers in their final push for the end of the quarter.
In activities, we have congratulations to the OHS show choir who performed wonderfully at the district's competition, scoring the highest of those in attendance.
The show choir extravaganza is next Friday, March 29th, and all 3 show choirs will be performing.
The Asa Adams musical is starting up and they will be performing Rainbow Fish the musical.
One Act's had a great weekend. Patrick Howard, Andrew Hayden, Max Newman all got shout outs from the judges.
Unified Basketball had an amazing festival last week.
Read Across America Spirit Week at the elementary school was so much fun with lots of participation across grades.
The annual class of 2024 cornhole tournament is slated for the 19th of May. First place is a $50 gift card.
The high school is happy to have firefighters visiting during lunch tomorrow.
The baseball and softball teams have started Arm Week and are ecstatic about getting this year started.
And lastly, tennis is starting tryouts next week.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments? Lots going on. I don't know how you or the teachers and principals keep up with it all, but
Happy SAT day. Gosh, my brain is still mush.
I bet.
There were no bells today. Caused a little bit of a kerfuffle.
What did you think of the visual?
I am not a fan personally. No, I love like very regular, just like pencil and paper testing. Not a fan.
Shorter though, right?
Yeah, it was shorter, yeah.
Superintendent's report.
I have a couple of items outside of the agenda. First, Lisa mentioned the upcoming interview process for an MLL teacher. We do have a good mass of applicants starting to emerge. So we'd like to identify the board member that is willing and able to serve on this committee. Lisa plans to interview in the next week or so, right, Lisa? Like, can you give a little more information just to help the board?
Yeah, I'm thinking probably not next week, probably the week after, just to give everybody a chance. I think one of them will have to be a Zoom meeting and in the afternoon so we can have staff members be involved.
So anyone have interest or availability for that?
I can do it if there's a remote option, if it's before 4:30 or 5. If that's an option,
Yeah, that's hopefully it will be, right around 3:30.
yeah, if you're okay with a remote board member, I can Zoom from work.
Sure.
Okay.
I could also do it if you don't want to do it during work. It's really your call.
I mean, you do quite a bit already, so
Either way.
I'll do this. I'll clean my conscience. There'll be more hiring, I'm sure.
There will.
Thank
Okay.
you.
What was that?
Also wanted to mention, we've had some conversations about the upcoming eclipse and just student safety. And the peak for this area is supposed to be between around dismissal time for all our buildings. And so we've ordered safety glasses for all students and staff to make sure that wherever students are during that period of time, they have appropriate eyewear. I've asked principals to, in their buildings, determine if they're going to have any special events or plans around that, just being observant of safety. And so I know that the high school is planning, you know, an opportunity perhaps for a group to go somewhere where they can see, the total eclipse, but that's you know, a kind of a special offering that they're doing. So we're doing that for a limited amount of high school students who sign up, but then just safety around campus for others. So, you know, we're going to talk about this again in our admin team Friday, and I'm going to ask principals just to firm up, you know, any safety plans and communicate those with staff and parents. So I wanted to let you know that's on our radar, that we're thinking about it.
How many glasses?
We were at 1,000. Yeah.
Like we can get 1,000 glasses that quick?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean,
Way
you
at
know.
the eye doctors right now.
And we, you know, made sure that they were the glasses that were,
Come get some solar frames and then also some new frames.
yeah, they're not like your glasses, you know, it's the paper glasses, they're not. Yeah. But they are the ones that are rated for proper, you know, filtering.
Cool. Just out of curiosity, like, what are the costs?
I think we got them for about 85 cents a piece. So, you know, but just felt like it was the right investment to make, given that's just missing time. And, you know, tell you know, some adults, but also children, you don't look. So, you know, we've just taking that precaution, so.
At a minimum, they would be told, right, to not look directly at it.
Right. Yeah.
You ever told a second grade class, don't look at
I'm not really worried about ACEs so much, and
Oh.
more worried about you guys.
A group of freshmen are like, okay, who can not blink the longest?
The ACE kids are probably good.
Some of them.
So that's, you know, we're working on that plan right now. I want to just let you know that I'm serving on the stakeholder advisory committee at the town for the town manager search process. So representing just a voice for the schools in that process. So if you have anything that matters, you know, to you to represent that process, you can let me know. This committee doesn't have any decision-making authority other than just advisory for the council, but it's, you know, just weighing in on things that we feel are important in the process. So we've had a couple of meetings, and I feel like the council's running a really good process. Any questions before we move on with the agenda?
All right, on to the budget. And I know Meredith is going to present a bunch of documents, but to just kind of set the stage. This is the meeting where we really need to set the big frame, right? There's still information coming in. We're going to learn more about tuition students. We're going to learn more about insurance. We're going to make tweaks, 10,000 here, 20,000 there, but you know, if you want to put it this way, the $100,000 decisions, this is the meeting where we're making those kinds of decisions. So, yeah, prepare yourself for a detailed conversation. And we, you know, really need to come out of tonight with a lot of those kinds of bigger framings actually decided, even though we have 5-6 more weeks before we sign warrants, just because of the time frames and, you know, the need to dig down into deeper details. So, yeah, we'll let Meredith present what she's got, and then I'll maybe try and frame the discussion so we can, you know, have a focused discussion instead of a 3-hour rambling discussion, and go from there.
Last meeting, you asked us to come back with just a list of ideas for potential ways to reduce the budget, to reduce tax impact. Before I get into that list, I just want to provide just a additional framing. We provided to the board in your packet, it's on the website as well for those using the virtual materials. The updated kind of one pager that shows the whole picture. And the only thing that's changed on that is Lisa has done just some more investigating about incoming freshmen and what that picture is looking like for special education tuition students coming in. And we've adjusted that projection down a bit for special education tuition. I think it adjusted things by just about $16,000. So, but we wanted to make sure you had the most up-to-date version of our entire picture. So, you know, the number that I know you're probably looking at most is that what is the increase decrease right now that we're working against? And it's that about the middle of that page, $1,256,751.95. So it's only changed a little bit, but we wanted you to have an updated copy of that. So we worked with you know, admin on looking at potential reductions. Lynn and I did a really thorough look ourselves to also just kind of see people's thinking and find things that we might be able to find, and have categorized our listing in the same way that we did things last year, where we prioritized really in 3 buckets. Priority 1 would be kind of corrections that we found or adjustments that somehow, like if the pictures changed since we did budget, we could adjust things anyway, or we should adjust things anyway. So that's priority 1. As you know, we build a budget in December and forecasting a lot. And so by the end of March, we just know more things than we knew when we put the budget together a couple of months ago. So category 1 is either corrections, duplications, or adjustments that we have found that can be made. Tier 2 are areas that the admin team has looked at and feel like we could make these adjustments with minimal impact to, you know, offerings, programming, whatever the area is. And, you know, feel comfortable that that's a reduction that we can, that wouldn't be a painful reduction for us to make. Tier 3 would be where pain begins, right? Where things start to feel like we're not able to operate in the way that I think we hope for, or that maybe, you know, we've tried to prioritize. We don't have anything in tier 3 right now. Depending on where things land, we can go back and do tier 3. Everything we're bringing you tonight is in tier 1 and 2 in terms of non-staff reductions. So just looking at that list, I think I'll share my screen so we're all, folks online can just track. And yes, you can see I have the weather app open as a tab. I am monitoring. It's changing.
Can't imagine why.
So you can see the corrections adjustments is the larger set of numbers here. It's totals 121,913 of potential reductions. And you can see that list here. Lynn, I asked Lynn to be available and be ready to talk. So I'm gonna ask Lynn just to kind of do a rundown of these items. Do you want us to kind of go one by one, or do you want to just ask questions about anything?
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
If I'm hearing you correctly, anything with a 1 is a no-brainer, right? Those are corrections and errors and mistakes and things found, right?
Yeah, or pictures change, some things
right.
evolve,
Okay.
yes. So maybe for 1, if we'll do it, do you have any questions about any of the 1s?
When it says leaves blank, that means the budget, say, line for step-up day for OHS principals has been reduced, but there's still money there for it.
Right, that's what's remaining.
Ah, okay.
So do you have any questions about any of the items in 1? Okay.
Well, can I ask a second clarifying question?
Yeah.
Moving to 2.
Okay.
Did I hear you say earlier, 2 is things that can be done with a very minimal amount of pay?
Right. Okay. Right. That's how I would describe it.
Program impact, but not huge.
Yeah. So for tier 2, Lynn, do you want to talk down those? You know those numbers best. I'll just talk about the first one, and then I'm gonna let you talk about most of the rest.
Okay.
The van is one that, you know, it's just obvious. We feel like it can help with some cost savings. Those cost savings, you know, take a few years to realize. And I think that it'll be the next year when we do our transportation contract that I think will really have the opportunity to begin cost savings, because we have the potential to maybe reduce our number of contract miles in the contract. So, you know, I feel like we could put that decision off a year and wait on a van for another year. So that's why it just doesn't feel like the right time. When we have this kind of big increase, it just doesn't feel like the right time, even though we know in the long run it can help us save money. But perhaps next year would be the year to contemplate that again. Lynn, do you want to kind of, let me talk about one more,
Okay.
legal. In years that we know we're doing negotiations and we're going to have more legal representation and costs, we have increased that line. We are not, you know, going to be for for 1 year negotiating, that's next year. So we feel like we can reduce that line by the amount you see here, 10,000. So those two are, you know, the larger ones in this category. The others are, you know, smaller in scope. Lynn?
Okay, so the rest of the lines are, you know, we've kind of asked admin to look at their lines and see, and these were the kind of things they came back. So ASAP PD, that's likely things that, you know, teachers put money in the budget with nothing specific in mind, like not a specific conference, but like, well, I might want to go to a conference, so I'm gonna put some money in there. We do have money in there for that case, and we didn't remove it all completely. We just reduced some of those kind of potential conference things. Same with field trips. When we kind of looked back through and really looked at the cost and what they were going to be taking on a more specific level, we were able to reduce that. I'm not sure. I know it's an Elmo dock camera. I think that maybe one of those was purchased this year, but I'm not 100% sure on that one. That was just one that that Richard came with that we could possibly do without if we needed to. Guest speakers, again, that was not really anyone in mind. We still have money in there for guest speakers. It's just reducing it down some without anything specific. Bulk and art supplies at the middle school, they went back and kind of looked at what they had, what they need, and thought that they could reduce that a little bit. Same with OMS books. I think we had an additional teacher in there that will be different than next year. I mean, we're not losing a teacher, but just shifting around.
I think, Lynn, we took a little from each, like
each of the 4 teachers.
So,
yeah, okay.
We spread it out, right? Yeah.
Okay. OHS travel, that was again, and looking at what was specifics out there and cutting back some of the hotels that maybe aren't needed, especially when there wasn't something specific. It was just money in there for hotels. And principal travel as well. They put money in there in hopes to, but the reality is that they haven't gone to as much. It's hard for them to get out of the building. So, you know, realistically, they have some money there, but realistically what they've been spending. A lot of these, we went back and looked at the historical data of what was actually being spent. I can say that too with field trips and other things. Almost every single one of these, Meredith and I went back to a document that I create that shows the 5-year history of every line in our budget. And we went through carefully on lines that, you know, maybe were increased or not decreased, but we haven't spent that money over those 5 years. So a lot of that is looking at those and kind of going back and saying, okay, we haven't spent them. Is there anything in specific this year? If not, then let's reduce it back down closer to what we think we're going to spend. And that was kind of the same way through most of these number 2s. GT.
Yeah, I think for a couple of them, actually, I went back further than 5 years, because some of these like field trips and travel felt like, okay, 5 years, we get into 3 years where everything was different for travel and field trips and PD. So I went back to pre-COVID times and what were we spending. And so we really tried to be thoughtful about looking at, you know, if are there specific wants, or people just kind of budgeting some just in case money, and looking back historically, what has the spending level been, to try to bring forward what we felt like were really reasonable places to trim things down.
And when you look back that far at, say, previous spending, and you kind of create the line for, say, next year, this coming year, is it adjusted for inflation? You know, like spending 7 years ago, it's quite a bit different prices.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a big gap. We're not doing anything tight. And you know, it's just we just aren't seeing the level of expenditure. And I think it's just when people have to budget, they budget, you know, in December, they have to put their budgets together and get them to their principals by early January, and they just don't know what they want to do. And what we're seeing in data over time is there's just a lot of surplus, which, you know, leads us to having, we were having this conversation about unassigned goes up, and that's part of why. And I think there's a real balance. We don't want to trim things so tight that we don't have flexibility and don't have some contingency room, but you also don't want to be overtaxing, right? And so I think in these lines in particular, I don't think that the inflationary issue is going to be, it doesn't answer the gap that we see in the expenditure pattern and what we're budgeting now.
Okay.
I think supplies, that's a little bit more of, you know, we've seen more escalation. We've seen some escalation in, say, you know, conference costs, but not a lot in the kind of conferences that we see people going to. Certainly mileage is different. Mileage costs more, but we do have the vans, and so that's eliminated, you know, some of our mileage costs. So there's just a lot of factors that I think with those three lines, the 2 PD travel line and the miscellaneous where field trips lives.
So can I ask, make sure I'm understanding this right? Sorry, there's some chaos in my house if you didn't notice. So in every one of these lines, in the past, have we never come up against the limit? Like I'm looking especially at the little ones, like the art supplies for $800 and stuff like that. Is it there's always a surplus, like of a substantial amount in these?
We didn't cut anything that we felt like we have been short in our 5-year look back, and in some of them we went back further. Yeah, we didn't cut anything that we felt that we saw that there was a shortage of money, or even fully expending those lines.
Even fully, I guess I'm asking about, like, yeah, fully expending none of those. Yeah, okay.
And you're still leaving padding, you're just leaving less padding than before.
That's right. We have the insurance placeholder there just for you to know and think about. At the bottom of this page, I put the, we'll come back to what's in between this, but the insurance kind of what ifs. You know, if we have 0% increase, it's around $144,000 cost savings. If it's a 4% increase, it's around 72. Dental, we get dental news kind of late in our budgeting process. So some years we just don't get it in time to make an adjustment. If we got it in time to make an adjustment and 0%, it's 4,000. So it's not as big an impact area either. But those are the numbers and what, you know, could potentially be seen. Again, next week we get what's called an insurance ceiling, rate ceiling. So it says, you know, no one in Anthem, MEA, you know, benefits trust is going to be above this percent. And so, you know, we'll get an indication then about what's the worst case. And then it's a couple weeks after that we get our confirmed final rate.
Can I ask another question on those number 2 up above rows 30?
Sure.
30. So I think I asked this last time too, but like I guess I'm kind of interested in the relative amount of each of these. So like what percentage of like the art or the books or travel like these represent from that line, you know what I'm saying? Is that information available?
We could provide that. Yeah.
And that number with art, that's not just art. We didn't take 800 from art. It's the bulk line. So it's things like the supply closet, and like they went back and looked at the art supplies and kind of see, at this point in the year, what are you going to have left? What are you going to need for the next year? And they probably have more art supplies than they had initially, thought in December. So it's really just kind of refining. And I know that the administrators are, and as well as Meredith and I we're not taking something away that we feel like they're going to need.
I guess, no, I'd like to know, is there something in particular you'd like to know that on? I really, these are grouped in a way that some of them are easier than others to provide that. So if there's something you're curious about, I'd like to know so we can provide that and not add that as a part of this exercise internal.
Yeah, I guess sounds like it's more work than it.
Well, no, if there's something that you're particularly curious about, we can see if we can.
I guess I'm just sorry. Like anything that's like directly impacting, teaching, right? Like, and so including like the ASA field trips or the like art supplies and books and travel. I mean, each of those I'm kind of.
Yeah, well, that's almost the whole list. So
yeah, so fine. I know, right? So I don't want to make too much work for you, but it is sort of like in my. So I'm not saying So that's the question that I'm curious.
Yeah, about. I mean, typically we haven't gotten to that level of discrete kind of line analysis.
Yeah,
so that would be a show.
I would just, we're talking, take out the two big ones, right? Which is the van and the legal. We're talking $15,000 total, and I'm just not sure. We have bigger levels of questions for the board, so I'm just hesitant to dive too deeply into that. Because on the one hand, it's not really a cut on a certain level, right? Because we've never spent that much money in the past. And on the other hand, there is the administrators have flexibility if for whatever reason, super prolific art student uses more popsicle sticks than ever used before in the history of all of ASA. Carrie can find that money somewhere else. They have the ability to move money back and forth a little bit. So I just would put a caution about how much the board wants to dive into the $500 here, $1,000 there.
Sure.
So I talk about personnel, so you can kind of see that like there's staff reduction ideas and then one-time purchases. So the staff reduction ideas, we have a couple of here. So we have these two half FTE positions at the high school that have been added and removed. We've done those at ASA. We've done those at OMS, all based on enrollment fluctuations. So at ASA, for example, we've had this one additional teacher that's moved up through since I think second grade, maybe first grade with the large cohort that's coming up through ASA and will be in fifth grade next year. So we've done things like that, and we did that at the high school several years ago with the large cohort of seniors and juniors. Those two grades combined were really large cohorts to have coming through back to back. So we've talked about the enrollment. You asked us to, look at all, matters of budget and considering enrollment. And the two half FT positions feel like it's the time to consider that. The ELA position, we actually removed that from the budget last year and just took a part of an OMS teacher for a year or so to fill that position. And so there's no cost savings to realize on that position. I propose that we move that position back into the middle school where I feel like their enrollment isn't changing next year, but there have been some negative scheduling impacts to removing that half unit that have just been challenging in several ways. We think that's would be appropriate to do that. And then the other half position is still at the high school, the half social studies position. And you can see what that savings would be should you choose to do that one. The, you know, the 3 grades of lowest enrollment that we're projecting based on 9th grade projections, 9th, 10th, 11th, are typically the 3 grades where, you know, required social studies courses are taken. And so, you know, those are the grades that have the fewer students now. And so we feel like, while, you know, it does limit, you know, the course offerings somewhat, also the core classes will have fewer sections, because like that junior class is moving out of junior year where, you know, they're taking more core classes. You know, it never feels good. It's always painful when we have to do the rollback. And so, but that's what the savings would be for that staff position. Additionally, you know, we have proposed that we put in, reinstitute the halftime admin assistant to help out with the financial operation of the district. You know, I mentioned why we felt like it was time to do this. You know, grants are a great thing, but they, you know, they are really a big part of, you know, what feels overloading in addition to other factors. And just wanting to make sure that we're not costing ourselves money by saving ourselves money, because there are a lot of fine details that office has to monitor across the whole district. And we can only spread, you know, those individuals so far. You know, there was something recently that was just an example of that, you know, we have to do lots of review of work from a lot of departments to make sure that errors are caught before they go out of district and reporting and such. And you know, it's kind of the last stop to verify other people's work. And sometimes things get biased that are mistakes that we need to catch. And so having more capacity to do that can save us money or keep money in district, but it's also spending money at a difficult time. So we're putting that forward as a potential idea. That's as far as we went with staffing. We'll have to look, you know, to the board to decide if you want to go further. I think, you know, Mark, you asked a question about what's a representative kind of staffing, you know, cost. That's a hard question to answer because the answer is it depends, right? But you see, like, there's a halftime teaching position there, and that's an all-in amount of benefits and everything. So, but it just depends on where someone is, what kind of insurance they're taking as to what that cost would be. You know, but the range, you know, I would say the average is around 60,000 but that would not typically be someone taking the insurance. I should make that caveat and be a little higher for that. And with support staff, it's going to be around 40,000. So that's just kind of for your information.
Thank you.
And then we've done this before certain years where we've identified one-time purchases and said, these are things that, you know, aren't recurring costs that you could consider buying these items from unassigned to help, you know, reduce the tax burden in 1 year. We've identified a list. You know, usually they're bigger amounts that we choose to do that with. Like usually it's, I think this year we did it, or last year we did it when we bought the truck was from unassigned, I think. Or, you know, certain larger types of expenditures. But we've gone through to look at, you know, what are some of those types of expenditures that we feel like we could approach that way. So we would still be buying them. They would still be coming out of our unassigned balance, but they wouldn't be causing us to raise taxes to buy those things this coming year.
Can I just ask a clarification?
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, but technically, yes, though, right? Because that's less money from carry forward that we could put.
It is less. I mean, it's happened as a 1/6 other how you do it. You could either raise your carry forward in the budget and offset it that way, or just, you know, it's kind of the same thing, but saying it differently. But
because in theory, I mean, obviously the construction application costs we have to, you know, I think we're committed to. But if we didn't do the rest of those things, which really doesn't add up to much in comparison to the application cost, that would be that much more money that we could take and carry forward into the budget to help reduce that, right?
Yes.
I think about it. If it's in the operating costs, we typically set the carry forward for a best guess of what's not going to decrease the bank account. Right, and so if it's in the operating costs, we're going to set the carry forward so the bank account doesn't decrease. When we take it out as a one-time unassigned, I think about it as we know we're drawing down the bank account, so it's using the savings instead of operating.
Right. Yep.
But you're right, it's still all bookkeeping, but to me, that's the conversation is it's gonna be part of operating, and we're gonna raise taxes to cover it, or it's gonna be cutting the bank account, which is a different solution. Because it doesn't impact taxes if we cut the bank account.
So the only other thing to add to the picture is last meeting, I mentioned that, you know, Jason had worked on a laptop, you know, device replacement plan. And since that time, you know, he's been working on just a revised replacement plan that brings down costs somewhat, just takes some different approaches of how to do that. We're still working on that. We're trying to get some further clarification from the state and do some surveying of staff. But it looks like for next year that we could bring that down to 100,000 and accomplish, you know, the priorities we hope to accomplish in next year. And it would give us more time to work on. So what does the rest of that look like? So, you know, I'm going to show you something in a second where I've changed that amount. In the budget, though, that you see here, we've booked it as both an expense and a revenue from unassigned. So the main impact is kind of related to what you just said, Jake. If we, you know, bring that expense down to 100,000 instead of 147,000, then we're spending less of our unassigned. So if you look at, you know, this line here, total all listed reductions, the amount right now is 287,824. So that's taking everything that's priority 1 and 2, both of the staff reduction ideas, and all of these items from one-time purchases from unassigned, 287. So if you said we're going to go forward with all of those, then your increase in taxes, that 1,256,000 would go down by $287,000. So it would be, you know, upper
968,
okay,
927,
just under.
Yeah. Yep. And that's without insurance. You know, we don't know about insurance and anything else that might emerge. So, you know, we still have another month of information, or, you know, 3 to 4 weeks of information to help complete the picture.
The only real big things that could possibly emerge would be the insurance would be one, or some kind of an unanticipated spike in tuition. Everything else, if it emerges, is going to be pretty small change, right?
I mean, in some years, there's been extra gifts from the legislature, but I'm not hearing anything about it.
You can't rule it out, I suppose.
Yeah.
I haven't even heard of people. Maybe not.
So you want to look at unassigned? That's the last page in your handout. I wanted you to just see that picture because I think it intersects with this in important ways for you to understand. So when the auditor came to give their annual report of our FY23 finish, you may recall that we have an increase compared to the previous year. Our unassigned fund balance is $2,883,000 and some change. So it went up by just about, what's that? 90,000 around. And so that's really what we would consider to be our beginning balance for this current year we're in. This year we replenished our fuel stabilization reserve because we used a good bit of it last year. So we added 50,000 to that from unassigned. We paid our last Milky payment for the high school lease, long-term lease that we did. So that's was the 152,000, almost 153,000. And then we did our 200,000 that we've committed to do from unassigned to capital improvement. So all of those things, if all of those things come out of unassigned and we spend our budget as planned, except for the 849,000 that we annually put in there as a kind of our amount from unassigned to help us not overtax and recognize that we have contingencies built into our budget that we usually don't spend in trying to, find that right amount. If all of that worked out perfectly, then we would have 2.4 million in our unassigned fund balance. Brian reminded me this afternoon that that's never happened that way since he's been on
We had
on board, except
809 plus 400,000 last year, and we went up 100,000, right?
Right.
So we're proposing 829 plus 400 this year.
Right.
So why are we not going to go up 100,000 again?
Right. And Lynn has,
Lynn's got a counter argument, I know.
Yeah, she's ready. She's ready.
No, just the thing to think. The thing to think about this year is our revenue. Every year we tend to be lucky and we get over our revenue amounts. It's not going to happen this year. So we're not going to have that, but we still have contingencies. I'm not saying that we're going to spend 829,000, but we're just not going to have the cushion of the extra revenue that we've had in the past. In fact, I at my prediction right now, we will not hit our revenue number that we budgeted for in tuition. I think we're going to get a little more special education tuition because we have some one-on-ones this year that we're billing for that we didn't know about when we budgeted. But even considering that, I don't even think that is going to make up the difference in the regular tuition that we're going to be under. So that's just my thing to have in the back of our heads, is that our revenue picture I don't think is going to look like it has in the past. So that's been a big cushion for us. We've gotten more revenue than we budgeted, and we've underspent our budget. But I don't think that's going to happen this year.
So,
and I get to do the prediction soon. So
yeah, she's going to work on projections. But we talked a little bit about, the late transfer out of about 10 kids that were tuition kids, and some of them went over to Renton, most left the district. And then our 9th grade numbers did not, exceed, and I think we might have been short 1 or 2, or we came in right at that number and then lost other students. So, but who knows, right? It's hard. It's really hard to know. But if all of those things happened as the numbers on the paper, are laid out here, worst case scenario, not worst case scenario, it could be 2.4 million, or it could be 2.8 million again. We'll know more as we get closer, hopefully, to the end of the fiscal year. But when you have to make decisions, you're not going to have much more information. Lynn will do a projection exercise and it'll give us a little bit more. So if we had 2.4 million in unassigned at the end of this fiscal year and committed to do the things on the other page, like the $52,000 of one-time purchases, like, the Haley Ward contract to do the middle school construction application, the ACs, the library furniture, that list. That's 52,887. The laptop iPad replacement for next year, I'm projecting is going to be about 100,000, and then $200,000 to capital improvement reserve. So if we did all of those things and everything worked out, the way it on paper is designed to work out, then we would be down to 2.1 million. Again, that would be really surprising if that's the way it actually turned out and we went down the amount that, we're showing on this paper. But I think that that's important just to see, the numbers that we're expending out of unassigned each year.
When you say it's surprising, you expect it to be a better case scenario?
It has been, except for 1 year.
Right. But Lynn thinks that 2,100,000 is more realistic and less pessimistic?
The FY 25 beginning balance is assuming that we wouldn't use any of the 829. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I will know more after I do my projection, but I don't think we're going to use 829,000, but I think we might use some of that.
But if we used 829,000 at the end of this year, unassigned fund balance would actually be 1.6 million.
Right.
Around there.
So you'd have to use like an additional 800,000 in the next 3 or 4 months.
Right. Well, we'd have to spend down our lines to zero.
Okay.
Across all lines, if we're using all of 829. Which the pattern isn't showing that, but also the revenue pictures just, you know, you get monthly financials that don't show the revenue, it just shows the expenditures. And the expenditures are very similar to what they have been. There's been nothing jumping out to me to say, oh, that expenditure pattern is unusual or troubling. But I think the revenue is what Lynn says is feeling different to her this year than previous years. So she feels like there's a chance we might dip into the 829 sum just because of that. But that's why we have it if we need it. And we'll know more, I think, when she does kind of the reconciliation over the next few weeks to share with us at the next board meeting. So,
oh, sorry.
No, that's the picture. I was going to say, what question?
I think I only have 2. One's a comment, maybe a question. So it sounds like in many of the cases, in particular small cases that Noah asked, there's a reduction of buffer, but there's still enough room in there that if a prolific art, for prolific arts or if an amazing field trip opportunity came up, that $500 or $1,000 can be moved around. That.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And so that sounds good to me because I do trust our administrators and their focus on curriculum and programming. My second question is with the van. I understand your reasoning, but given the unassigned balance, would it make sense to just get it sooner so we can start that process of long-term savings versus waiting? And I guess coupled with that is not having the van going to reduce or compromise the services we can provide to students?
I think that the real cost savings will be able to happen, or the more significant cost savings, once we renegotiate our transportation contract. And I think, the main, we're using the larger white van for student transportation, almost exclusively, but on weekends, sometimes we have student groups using that for travel. So the other minivan is more for staff travel or really, really small group travel, because, it's just a standard minivan. I mean, the only thing that I would say about our limitations is for pre-K in particular, our limitation is the number of seats on the van. And I think we're full in one session of available spots. We haven't had another ask, but the seats on the van are limited. And I'm not sure we can find another driver. We're having trouble keeping the driver that we have in place. So that's our main limitation on van availability. Like if we got another van, I think it would need to be probably for pre-K and need to be, but we'd have to have another driver, which is really difficult. And you can't have a higher capacity van than we have.
All right.
Did I answer that question?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
I had another question going back to, it's really the second page. You have this shift to Title II and shift to Title I.
Thank you.
Which are federal grants, right, for targeted purposes. But I'm assuming we're already spending fully out our Title II and Title I. So those are really program cuts in a specific area.
Well, this year, I think we were surprised with our allocation that we had. Is that right? Am I saying this right, Lynn and Susan? That we had a higher allocation than we anticipated. And so if that carries into next year, we feel like we can put more into Title I than we, have been doing. Because for a while that was going down, down, down. But then last year they changed the way they calculated that, and it was really to our advantage. And so if that holds, then we feel like we could push a little bit more over into that. Because we augment the cost with, but it doesn't cover with what the grants don't.
That's not reflected in the numbers here yet.
No, but and we're waiting on the allocations to come out.
Will we have that in April?
When do we expect those allocations?
The preliminary allocations often come the very first part of April.
Okay. Other questions before we frame the big discussion? No, okay. So like I said, we do have 2 more meetings. The last meeting in April is when we have to, this is it, no more, the ink is drying. Literally, Lynn has to get the lawyer's input on writing the warrants, and we have to sign the warrants the first week in March, but whatever we say at the last meeting in April is it, that's what's going to voters. So we do have 2 more meetings, and we could do some tweaking. We'll find out about the insurance. We'll find out if the tuition students, have changed drastically. I guess we'll find out about Title I and Title II. So
Tuition, you might know, right?
tuition, yeah,
Well,
tuition
we'll
still
know
get.
what we know.
Well, no, well, at least have the registration data, but it still changes all the way through the summer. Right, so we'll have some more information. The insurance is a big one, right? It could be 140,000. I doubt we're gonna see a 0% increase. I don't remember a couple of years.
We had 0.
We had 0 once recently.
But it's not super common, but the 4% is very well. So that's a $100,000 change. Most of the rest of these we're talking 10, 20, 30,000. And we're in a position where we have 1.2+ million gap right now, right? So the conversation is, this is how I'd like to, kind of structure it. If you want to think about it, the board there's some more information, right? But we can't really control those informations. We can't make our insurance go down. And tuition is set in stone this year, whatever it is. We can talk about conversations to invest more to get more next year, or we can talk about, other things we could do, facility rentals, whatever in the future. But for this year, everything else is set in stone. There's 3 things we can do. We can raise taxes, we can draw down the unassigned, and we can cut programs, right? Those are the 3 things the board's talking about tonight. And in my mind, most of those come in the easy versions and the hard versions, right? Program cuts, there's easy stuff. I think, different people where the line for easy versus hard may differ, right? Is it a 1? Is it a 2? Is, eliminating existing staff? To my mind, that's already a hard cut. Eliminating non-existing staff that's going to generate revenue, that starts to sound like a hard cut, right? And then the really hard cuts are, we start cutting into classroom teaching, right? We're effectively raising, right? The one proposed cut is just tracking enrollments, but after that, we're talking about increasing class sizes, right? And that's that $60,000, $70,000 number that Meredith was talking about. Those start to be really hard program cuts. But if a $1.2 million tax increase is a really hard tax increase too. So this is where the conversation sitting tonight is about weighing these things back and forth. Right, the drawdowns, to my mind, the one-offs are pretty easy. We have a pretty long tradition of doing that. We're not talking a huge amount of money. $50,000 is certainly very real money, but compared to our bank balance, which is currently in the high 2 millions, that's not. But the other harder drawdowns would be to actually take cash out of the bank to fund this year. And I say it's hard because there's some comfort level about how much we draw that down. And B, we need to know that if we do that, if we spend 200,000 extra over that 50,000 out of the drawdown this year, that same 200,000 gap is going to exist next year. So all we've really done is, positive spin is we've spread out the pain of the tax increase. The negative spin is we just postpone pain as the tax increase.
Down the road.
Right.
Depending on what next year's like, we could come out of it.
Right. Next year could be better, could be worse. it's a new legislature, right? Elections are in November. To me, I don't have a, when it's the second year of a 2-year budget, you have a pretty good sense of how things are gonna go, but when you don't even know who's gonna be elected or who's gonna be, you know, are the Democrats, Republicans gonna control the House and the Senate, and it's really, really hard, but yes, it could be worse, it could be better. So kicking the can down the road, if we were in a 2-year budget, we knew next year was gonna be better, that's an easy thing. Kicking the can down the road, knowing we have no idea if it's gonna be better or worse next year. It's a harder decision, right? And especially in this larger context, if we know that nobody's caring that the EPS formula is not keeping up with inflation, it's probably gonna be worse next year or hard. Now, if I had to predict that macro factor alone, no matter who wins the legislative election, that macro factor is not going to change by next year. So probably they're not going to
the executive branch to change, right? So we have at least half of that equation is going to be.
That's right.
Right.
And she seems pretty happy to sit at 55% and ignore the fact it's really a cut. So that part, anyway, yeah, I mean, I say I don't have a crystal ball, but actually if I had to predict, it's going to be tough next year. Right, so those are the levers. Program cuts ranging from easy cuts to hard cuts. Drawing down the unassigned from some pretty easy things like one-time expenses to some pretty hard things, right? Deferring, really just drawing down the account and deferring the tax paying for a year. Because maybe we think, you know, spreading this big increase across 2 years is a good thing or a bad thing. That's obviously a political decision that I want to hear from all of you on. Right, and then whatever's remaining after that goes into taxes. So those are the 3 levers we can talk about. I'd like us to talk about those 3 levers and how far down each of those roads we want to go. And then we can start trying to merge that back together into a coherent plan. I'll just start program cuts. The 1s are easy. For me personally, the 2s are easy. Staff reductions that are on the table are starting to get hard. As much as I hate to do it, I feel like we have to do the social studies. We've committed to tracking attendance. And when attendance goes up, we've been very good about putting people in, but that becomes a one-way ratchet if we don't do the opposite task about you know, reducing staff to match. And most years we've been able to do that through natural attrition, but I don't know, this year that's not on the table, but that's a conversation. I find the finance office position, I think we're really foregoing revenues. You know, Meredith mentioned grants. There's also state captures. There are a lot of our programs, Chapter 104, special ed, we actually get to charge the state. And if we're missing expenses, we're missing revenue, right? So that actually is a revenue position. And now, this is not the person who's going to catch those things. This is the person who's going to take enough off of Lynn's plate so that Lynn can catch those things. But that's a hard one for me to go. I guess I would say I'm on the fence on that right now. For me, going any further, right, starting to talk about cutting classrooms, teaching classroom size beyond our attendance drop is probably too hard or a no-go for me. It's just, you know, we'd have to cut 10 teachers to make a significant dent in the tax story. And I just don't see our community supporting that. I don't think it's what our community wants. And that's not somewhere I'm prepared to go.
10 would be free to come. I don't think anybody's entertaining that option, right?
Well, right, it's all a matter of degree. We could shave 1 or 2.
But, you know, 2 at 60,000 isn't.
It's 120,000.
And
it's
that's
a quarter to a fifth of a meal.
So that's not insignificant.
Yep. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, so I'm not. I'm not prepared to go there, but obviously I want to hear where other people want to go. I'm probably a little more worried about the tax increase than, probably less worried than some people sitting up here, and probably more worried than some people sitting up here. But 1.2 million is a really big number. That number has got to go down by hundreds of thousands. We've already got 250 on the table. We got possibility of another 50 or 100. I personally think we have to do not just the 50,000, but I would take 100 or 200,000 out of the unassigned to, you know, just transition the taxes. There's two schools of thought, right? Bite the bullet, get the pain out of the way, be transparent. The others spread it out. I don't know. I think it'd be irresponsible to go too far, but I'd probably take 100,000 out towards operating expenses this year. Just because we don't know what's gonna happen next year, and I feel like we've gone up a lot.
Out of the unassigned.
What's that?
Out of the unassigned. Right?
Out of the unassigned, over and above the 50,000, that's like one-time expenses.
Yeah.
And the multi and stuff that's already kind of in the budget.
Is this what's on the list that you gave us, Meredith? Is this really all we have for one time? If we can't find, there's nothing else that's one time in there?
Not that, I mean, for example, OMS books are one time, but next year it's something else. Yeah, it's like, there are other things that we kind of stagger, and there's really.
This
We couldn't
seems like
find
a
much.
low number in compared to what we've had in the past for one-time expenses.
Well, those years we were also doing, like, we bought the bleachers one year, and we bought, scoreboards one year, and so they're just.
You don't have anything like that in the athletic budget this year?
I mean, we'll take another look, but I don't, Lynn and I nothing popped out in Lynn's mind. She knows the details of that.
And we also had, like you said, the truck. That's $40,000. So that was a big amount. And in athletics, it's like uniforms, but we rotate, just like the books, we rotate which teams get uniforms.
Yeah, the things that are ongoing, like textbooks and uniforms, I don't think we should start calling one time, even if they're capital expenses.
And I'm certainly supportive of what Brian's suggesting, and I might even be willing to go more than 100,000, but I would really strongly prefer that it be one time or not. And I know if it's not there, it's not there, we can't do it, but I mean, I get the logic of spreading it out, but at the same time, I kind of hate doing that, because it's really, we're papering over something that's gonna come back and bite us next year.
Yeah.
I'm not ruling it out, I just wish that we could find.
I think part of the problem is people knew this was gonna be a tight budget going in. This was not, right? There's other years we've had bigger asks, and we've dreamed big, and we've had math coaches, and we've had 2 buses, and we've had a lot of things going in, and this year everybody kind of knew, which means there's just a whole lot less to squeeze out than there has been some other years.
I mean, we've known that we were catching up on inflation with salaries. And last year and this year, for this budget year, next budget year, when those big, adjustments are having to be made. And so there's just not a lot of other standout big pieces to pull out like that.
So, I mean, just to recap, I'm pretty much going with everything, on the administrative page. And I would say take an extra 100,000. I hope insurance and other things come through, but I'm not counting those yet. I'd say take an extra 100,000 out of the unassigned, which takes us up to about 350, which takes the taxes down to about 900,000, which is about a 1.7. I'd have to pull out a calculator, but it's 1 3/4 ballpark mil increase as opposed to the 2 plus 2.1 mil increase we're looking at right now. So that's where I come down. Where do other people come down?
Like you're saying, there's something, I don't know, yeah, it's the balance between, taxes, and it's not like we're spending irresponsibly, right? We're sort of in between state funding and inflation. And I guess the question I have, and it sounds like there isn't an answer, is, if we throw out the kitchen sink, not that we're suggesting that this year, do we have to throw out something next year because this is the new normal, right? Well, inflation may have tailed off where prices aren't going to decrease very much. We don't have negative inflation. So we're down to maybe ordinary inflation. If this is the new normal, then maybe there is a tax pain because living in Orono is more expensive than living in Milford. But we have a school culture and community that reflects that value. I know that doesn't benefit everybody if you're retired, if you don't have children. But there is some tension, and to Mark's point, no one's suggesting cutting 10 teachers, but I think to some degree our budget rate doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists in a community that values that people move here because of the school. They pay higher house prices and higher taxes because of the school. So to your point, Brian, I guess I'm with you. I wouldn't want to cut things that change what RSU 26 does for students and learners and staff and faculty. I can also understand the reluctance of paying operating costs from the unassigned, because that's not sustainable either. So I guess before spending from unassigned, I'd like maybe there's no reassurance. Maybe there's reassurance when Lynn comes back with the numbers that we don't have to continually do this, because we want to adapt to that new normal. And I don't know. It seems like we should rip the Band-Aid off. If the new normal is 1 point whatever mil, then we get it over with and we get on. It would be a problem if it's 1 point whatever every year. That would be a sting.
I mean, the problem is we're the dog and the state is, no, we're the tail and the dog is the state, right? State stomps all over our budget every year. Yeah. And it really, in my experience, you tend to have 3-4 year cycles of things are pretty tough. 3 or 4 years of things are pretty good. And we had 3 or 4 years that were pretty good. We were really responsible. We had a 0 increase. We had a 0.1 mil decrease. We had a 1 mil decrease. And we had, the construction bond came in that was supposed to be 1.9. It was only 1.3. So it was really a 0.6 mil decrease, not including the constructions, right? We have 4 straight years where we were flat or decrease. And then last year we had a big increase of 0.7, and now we're talking 1.7 or 2. So it's, who can predict what Augusta's going to do? But in my experience, these things tend to roll in 3 or 4 year cycles. We had a really good 3 or 4 year cycle, and I'm proud of the fact, that we gave that money back to the taxpayers when it came. But the consequence of that is we didn't build up our coffers. We're not really allowed to as a school district. It's a different story with the town. They're allowed to build up coffers, but we're not. But I'm proud we gave that money back to the taxpayers. But yeah, I don't know where I'm headed. They go in cycles. It's going to be bad for a couple of years, and then it's going to be good again. Is probably what I can say.
I'm less optimistic.
To what's going to really go, high school enrollment's going to drive this in part too. And if the projections of continuing declining high school enrollment, which are really statewide, and we've been kind of an outlier on that recently, but now it seems like it's getting to us, and the projections are accurate that some of our primary sending communities are going to have fewer kids. I mean, that could be a real problem, right?
Yeah, next year the largest class is going to be our senior class.
Yeah, I mean, we're taking a hit this year from this year's seniors to the projected freshman class.
Right.
We could possibly take that same hit again next year. And if we do that, I mean, we're talking about a net loss over 2 years of somewhere between 40 and 50 students at the high school. We get to that point, then I think we gotta take a serious look at class size and readjust it at that. We can buy a year. I don't think we can do it. I don't think we can do that again next year if that's the case.
Marissa, you have your hand up.
Sorry, I might be wrong about this, but the senior class that graduated last year was sort of the end of that kind of a cycle, right? Is the smaller class sizes, and then this year's junior senior were very big.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, to the point of these sort of 4 year cycles, 4 or 5 years ago, we dropped an English position. There was a retirement, so it's easier to do. And we did several other changes because the high school was smaller. And then, yeah, they were in the lower grades at that time, came up into the high school, and we brought teachers back. So yeah, there's definitely an ebb and a flow here. Yeah, you're right. I mean, different people are going to have different opinions about, is this 2 or 3 years that we're not hunkering down for just this year? I don't think I'm not going to claim that we're hunkering down for 2 or 3 years. Or is this the new trend for the next 5 to 10 years? In which case, I think depending on which of those you think is going on, then you're going to have a pretty different response. If it's a 2 or 3 year hunker, maybe you try and lessen the pain and spread it out. If you think it's a 5 or 10 year, you're probably more in the rip the Band-Aid mode, and there's more coming. So why are we postponing things? But of course, none of us know for sure.
And back to your point, Brian, too, about giving back the money to the taxpayers, which was, the right thing to do, but also that kind of hurt us in the other end, because then when it does go up, it feels like it goes up even more because we reduced it down so much with that, giving that money back. So, you know, it wasn't only that we didn't hold on to it, but we kind of gave them an extra subtraction from what they were paying in taxes that year. So the next year it felt like a much bigger increase than really it was if we had not given back that money. So there's, you know, it's the same kind of thing, but it's the optics of it looking like we're taking this huge shift when really we just had extra money that we get back to the town.
I will say that this current 7th grade class is a big class. They're a class of 59. Current 4th grade class is a big class. They're a class of 62. But, with that, it really depends on what our tuition student population looks like. But so we have these, about 4 years. Next year can be an all-time, like recent low for high school enrollment. And then we get a semi-larger OMS class, the next freshman class, and we'll see what tuition. And then 2 years later, another big freshman. So it's just
small district, and we have it's noisy.
At the last meeting, Mark made a comment about Hamden, and us losing students to Hamden Academy in recent years, very recently. And I learned that they've changed their orientation to transportation practices, and that they are busing to a wide range of districts. And so I think that there may also be room for us to, dig into, moves like that to reduce barriers to student attendance here, because, that might be, if Hamden has seen a shift as a result of changing their practice, then we might as well.
Well, the thing with that is Glenburn did not transport to Hamden at all. So they had no transportation. There was already transportation to every one of the sending schools around us, but Glenburn did not transport to Hamden previously. And so I'm not really sure who else we would transport, because there's already transportation from every one of the local schools to us. They just had that advantage of they don't transport to any sending schools, or they hadn't previous. They didn't, it was just within RSU 22. And now
it's probably a future discussion. It certainly merits some more. Right. I mean, I think some of the transportation students are on a hub system where they go from Glenburn to one location. There are ways we could provide more direct transportation. We could also provide transportation after sports so that sports became more of an option for people. So it's not this year's budget conversation, but it certainly bears conversation going forward about, right? I said that's one of the long-term levers is recruiting. And I feel like within the envelope of what we're doing right now, we're doing what we can do, but more out of the box thinking is certainly in the conversations ahead. But for tonight, probably we can't do any, we're not going to change this year's recruiting class. So
we haven't heard from
Noah you had your
yeah, I guess I wanted to sort of I was sort of thinking about the tax impact and what the community wants and stuff, and just want to think about that a little bit. We've talked about how like the impact on retired people that can't afford and like what their houses land costs, right? Because we've got this regressive tax system, and we've also, I think, in Orono have a lot of people that really can afford and really do want to invest in the schools. And like, I guess one question I have, and I feel like I feel like we should be putting forward what we need as a school, and don't want to be bound by those politics as much. And like, I guess my one idea, and thought I know it's not under our control, it's up to council, but like, in other places in Maine, they do sort of income-based tax release and sort of graduated taxes to make it more of a progressive tax system. And I just wonder if we could ask the council or in some way move to that kind of system. If I think we should be asking more for taxes and more for funding our schools for like what we need overall. So I guess I wonder what you guys think about this the idea of like really asking for
I
what
don't
we
think towns have the choice to do anything other than traditional straight
under state law.
valuation-based
I mean,
property
I know
taxes.
Portland does it, and other towns around do it, and it's under state law, is my understanding.
Mark, are you aware of anything like this? We should have another conversation though, but
Yeah,
I
I guess
I don't believe that's a lever that this town, we don't have it for sure, but I don't believe the town has that lever.
I
But
think
it's
we
not gonna
can,
help this year's budget anyway, so
but I
another
guess
conversation to have, but.
I understand that, but I guess my sentiment though is that I think that like that ultimately I think we should be asking for what we need to fund the schools, right? And so and I think we need to find a way to make that politically viable, however that is.
So in
And
the framing of what we're talking about tonight, what
yeah,
does that mean to you?
so to me that means I think that like the number one and two things I can live with cutting, right? I think with you, but I think once we get to the half salary for the social studies or the administrative position that to fund grants and stuff, like to manage grants and stuff, I think both of those feel like I wouldn't cut those, and I think they feel like they're impacting our school negatively, and feels like I think that anything that's gonna hurt our sort of mission and day-to-day operations in that way, I don't think we should be cutting. So, and then in terms of like what we take from unassigned or not, like I guess I'm I I don't know. I'm not particularly worried about the short term, I suppose. But I do think like the precedent we should be thinking about just having a meeting more in the future. So like not thinking we're going to just do this for 1 year. So which is where I get to this like thinking of like our strategy should be not just to like find a way, it should be to find a better, more inclusive solution along these lines, or something that we can live with in the future. So I guess I don't know. That's my thinking on those pieces.
Okay. Kevin, Adam, do you get to say everything you wanted to say?
I think so, in terms of what I know tonight anyway.
Okay, Mark or Jay?
I'm the only one that hasn't gone. So I'm good with cutting the ones. I'm good with cutting the twos. I'm good with cutting the halftime OHS social studies teacher. Meredith, if you recommend it, I'm okay with cutting the halftime in the central office. But the only thing I would say is if it's a position that you think will pay for itself or will go above paying for itself, I think we should probably keep it, but only under that circumstance. I'm okay with the spending the 52,000 out of unassigned for one-time purchases. What I'm not so sure on or decided with yet is how much, Brian, you recommended 100,000, or your opinion is 100,000 carry over. Not quite sure where I sit with it.
Mark, did you?
Yeah, I'm certainly fine with all of the ones and twos. For sure. I'm also fine with eliminating the halftime social studies teacher at the high school. I think I'm in the same place that Jake and Brian are on the halftime administrative position. If you think that it can at least break even and cause us to miss fewer things, and at best maybe generate with additional revenue, I think I'd like to keep that. But I'd want to hear a little bit more of your opinion and Lynn's opinion on that the next time. Well, I guess do we meet next week?
No, we meet on the 9th.
Yeah, so the next time we meet, a little bit more on that, but I'm fine with everything else that's proposed here. I would, I know I'm sure you've already done this, I'm sure you weren't gonna turn up anything else, but if we could maybe do one more look at, is there anything else that we could consider legitimately one time? I think I'm more where Brian is and where Jake is on taking some out, unassigned, to spread it out over the course of 2 years, although I really do hate doing that. But I think I'm okay with it. I'd feel better if it was really truly one-time spending. So if we could do another look, maybe something we missed, that would be great. And I think the only other thing I'd say that hasn't been said at this point is, and really when we look at these tier twos, you know, we're only, or first tier, number twos, first tier recommendations, that's a pretty small number. It's only $60,000 there. I'd like to see if we could find more there. If not, then I do think, to be honest, that we have to at least generate a list of tier 3 or category 3 tier, last tier category 3. Because I mean, even if we take everything that's on this page right now, that gets us down to $970,000. All right. Best case, which none of us expect for insurance, knocks that down to 820. It's still a pretty big increase. All right. We shave 100,000 off that. It's temporary relief, but let's say we shave 100,000 off. Now we're down to 720. Still around approximately $1 million, right?
$1.25 probably.
You know, so
well, that's the other thing we'll have in April is a guesstimate on the property valuations.
I mean, I don't want to go up any, but I think anything that goes, any increase that's going to be something over 1 million, I don't like that. So I guess that's where, as much as I don't want to cut anything else, I think I'd want to see at least what some of those last tier recommendations would be if we needed, if in fact we need to go. So I guess that'd be the one. I don't like to place additional work on your plate and your team's plate, but I think we at least need to see something in that category 3.
Okay, I feel like we know where people are standing. Students, this is a touchy topic. I don't want to put you on the hot seat. You don't need to say anything at all, but I also want to make sure you feel invited to chime in if you do have any thoughts or if you have any questions, right? I know we're taking a lot for granted in the budget because we've all done budgets 2 or 3 or 10 times before, but feel free to ask questions too.
I won't want to.
Okay. That's fair. So I guess
You don't have to have any feedback though? Okay, if you don't.
I got lost somewhere in the middle and found my way back again, so I know this is a hard job for you guys. Much respect to you guys.
yeah, it's for, we love the schools, we love our neighbors, right? And this is the one time of the year where those 2 things come into conflict. So if I could recap, seems like the 1s and the 2s, there's a full consensus around. And the one-time purchase seems like there's a full consensus around. Probably the things that are still on the table for the first meeting in April, the staff reductions are still a conversation. I didn't hear a full consensus there. I might have some 3-2 majorities that I heard, but things are still in the flux. So those are still open conversations. And I guess the request for information was a little tighter analysis about whether we really think that position could pay for itself realistically. And I heard somewhere between 0 and 100,000 for the unassigned. And so I know we'll get a forecast coming forward that may inform some people's opinions and we'll all just sleep on it for a week. So those seem to me like the conversation points that we have going forward. And so we'll come back in April. We'll know our,
We might know insurance.
We might know our insurance. We might not by the April 9th meeting. We may have to wait till the last. We might or may not have an update on tuition. We might have an update on the Title I and Title IIs. We will have a projection, which is we're close to the final audit on our cash position going out of the year. So that's all new information and the question's still hanging around. I didn't hear anybody say they wanted to cut additional staff between the proposed staff reductions. Is that a correct statement?
I do not want to cut additional staff.
Okay, I'm not hearing that being brought forward. So we'll have those information pieces coming forward in April. We have the staff reduction still as an area of conversation and the 0 to 100,000 drawdown as a conversation. Does that feel like a fair capture of where we're at? Does anybody have other thoughts or things that they think I missed? Is there anything that you feel like the admin team needs?
No.
Oh, I heard Mark ask for some more tier 3 cuts.
No, I think that's helpful direction.
Okay. Pause for a moment, make sure nobody has any last thoughts because this will become pretty time sensitive and compressed. All right, hearing no more thoughts. That was good work tonight, painful work. Nobody likes some of the things we're talking about tonight. I would make a motion to approve the slate of co-curriculars as presented. Is there a second?
A second.
And just for the record, this would be varsity boys soccer, Dave Hamill at the high school.
And this is also one that we had a hiring committee because it's a varsity, high school varsity coaching position. And Jake served on that hiring team, as did Sam.
Great. We're ready to vote. Go ahead and vote. Jake?
Aye.
Kevin? Aye. Mark?
Aye.
Noah?
Aye.
I also vote aye. I see Dave's on, so congratulations. Thank you, Dave. Policies. So the first policy is JFABD, admission of homeless students. As you probably all know, there's since school enrollment is based on address, it's obviously a complicated topic when a student is houseless, and there's laws around that. And Sam is our McKinney-Vento coordinator. She came to us and said, we're going through an audit. Thank you, Sam. We're going through an audit. We want to make sure our policy's in place. She worked with the state coordinator to make sure our policy is fully and correct and federally compliant, and that's what we're bringing to you. So that's the background context. It's been through the policy committee. I proposing we recognize a revision, so I would make a motion to adopt policy JFABD as presented as a revision. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or questions?
I did just have a couple.
Yeah, please.
So in, under definitions, so 1A1, it says trailer parks. Do we want to include that? I mean, we have a couple of those in town. I don't think we considered.
I don't think that's what that's meaning.
Yeah, but I thought that too, but then we go on to say campgrounds, so.
What it means is,
Go ahead.
okay, so what it means, and to be clear, I agree with you, like, it's kind of weird. That policy that the state liaison recommends is based on like the entire state. But what our job as liaisons is to look at our specific community and to define what means, like what meets the requirements for McKinney-Vento eligible based on our community. So based on what we know of our trailer parks that we have within that space, what we know, for me, it's also working with tuition towns and trying to figure out, for example, what's commonplace or what's typical, I guess you could say, in Greenbush versus Milford versus Indian Island. And so they basically, what Amelia Lyons at the time, now it's changed, unfortunately she left, which I'm really sad about, but is really working together as liaisons to define what it means for each community. And so she just wanted us to list the possibilities so that families knew that if their trailer park for some reason didn't meet the requirements and would make them eligible for McKinney-Vento, then I would be able to help. And so that's why it's listed that way. It doesn't necessarily mean that if you live in a trailer park, you're automatically McKinney-Vento, if that makes any sense.
But it does mean if you live in a trailer park, you could be McKinney-Vento, right?
Correct. And there are some students that we have had that have not had sewage, for example, water, heating. Okay. And so depending upon the situation of their trailer park, they very well could.
Okay.
And do you make that determination, or who is the who qualifies? Or
so I hope you all know me well enough now that I don't like to make decisions on my own, but yes, ultimately I am the McKinney-Vento liaison for our district. But what I really appreciate is I have amazing team with the school counselors of the student. So like if it's ASA, I work with Lisa, Carrie, and Maddie. If it's middle school, Richard and Peter and so forth. And then I also often work with Lynn and Meredith, as well as the people. If it's a sending town, I'll work with their special ed directors or their superintendents or their principals and so forth to really figure out what the situation is and how best to help a student. Our numbers are higher this year than they've been, but at the same time, we have amazing grants that Susan, Lynn, and I are working to support students with that, to be fair, in some ways we're struggling to utilize because some families don't want our help. Other families are more than willing and want me to pay more than I can. So it depends on the situation, but I've been the McKinney-Vento liaison for the last 10 years since I came here, and every year it's a little different. Every year I learn and grow. And so I'm always willing for feedback. Absolutely.
And is
I would just quickly say, I have extreme confidence that this law is put into place in a student serving way and not a penny pinching way. So go ahead, Noah.
I was just wondering, what can we have the sort of general sense of the numbers? I mean, I don't know if that's public enough, but like how many students qualify?
So right now, I have about 20 students that are eligible for McKinney-Vento support. Because to be honest, Noah, the thing that is new but was old too, so it's kind of weird. So when I first started, McKinney-Vento included unaccompanied and also foster families, kids in foster homes. So unaccompanied means they're not with their guardian, and foster obviously means they're in a foster home. In my 10 years being with RSU 26, foster home has been removed and has remained removed, and Lisa Sear or Smith is now the person who oversees those students and those families, but unaccompanied was removed and then put back in. So any of particularly high school students, I find, and I do have like 5 or 6 in that realm, that are not with their guardian, but are either on their own or with another family member or with a boyfriend, girlfriend, friend, whatever situation, they classify as McKinney-Vento eligible. And that is a new thing in which to support their needs and their growth, and making sure that there's no boundaries, issues, or barriers to them achieving their education and reaching their goals. And so because that's put back in, my numbers have increased. Plus, obviously, as unfortunately with many things, COVID has not helped the situation. But I really feel strong and proud that we here at RSU 26 work as a team to support our students and really in some ways try to really encourage families to look beyond the label in some ways. And I really try not to, I'm really careful, I guess I should say, on how I work with those families and how I communicate with them to make them not feel embarrassed or bad, I guess, for lack of a better word, to accept our help. And I'm really proud, for example, we recently had a family that's being evicted that I was able to support them with some money to keep them in their home for a little longer to hopefully, provide an opportunity for them to figure out where are we going next. And then the work will be, how do we keep them in our own schools, even though they maybe are going to be transient for a little bit. So I really am thankful to be a part of our team, to be honest.
Nick, do you have other points?
I did just clerical. There's a Riverside reference in section 5 that probably shouldn't be there.
You didn't catch all those?
Sorry, I tried. I tried to catch all of those.
It's the printing problem again. It's crossed out in the online version.
Okay. I don't have
so
I'm going with what's in the folder and it doesn't have that. And then the only other thing, that I saw was 7B7 says enrollment disputes are mediated in accordance with this law. I think it's supposed to be with the law. Because this is a policy, not, I think that's.
Yeah, you're right. Okay. This law doesn't make sense.
Right, the law. That's all I have.
Thank you. Does that sound right to you, Sam, the law?
Yes, that policy is based off the law. Absolutely.
Okay, so we need to make that amendment. I would make a motion to change section 7B subpoint 7 to say the law instead of this law. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? We do need to vote. Jake?
Aye.
Kevin? Aye. Mark?
Aye.
Noah?
Aye.
I also vote aye. So that change is adopted. Any other questions about
are there other edits? I don't see other edits on the online document that we're supposed to be looking at, but
the online document only had 2 edits that I saw. It got rid of the Riverside, and there's language in the state policy that we found just really objectionable, talking about throwaway children.
Oh, that was my other question. I see that
deleted that language.
Oh, okay, that was my question. Okay, so that's because I see that as being in the policy.
No, that's been dropped, and of course, that phrase had some contextual, educational, legal meaning at some point in time. So there was a reason it was included by the lawyers, but as educators, we didn't care that the lawyers wanted to include it. We were like, we're not including that phrase. So
I think it's because I don't have edit access that I don't see this.
Maybe that's why.
Yeah, I didn't have that.
Sometimes when we just share the link, it loses things.
Okay.
We'll keep working on figuring that out. As you know, Google Docs is a mystery.
Sure, of course.
Download it as a Word document.
Yeah,
Usually gives.
That's the one universal, is to download as a Word document and then print it as a PDF.
That's what I always do. Download it.
Any other questions or
I
comments?
wasn't asked what a throwaway child is, but now that we're getting rid of it.
Yeah.
I'll make a comment, just that I have seen Sam in her McKinney Bento capacity, and she is amazing, and she's fast, and she's responsive, and things happen very, very quickly. She drops everything to make stuff happen for kids. So she is an excellent liaison and complete trust in her motivations.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Kevin.
It's a great job.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate that.
All right, we ready to vote? So, Jake.
Aye.
Kevin.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
Noah.
Aye.
I also vote aye. The next one is IJOA. This is our field trip policy. Nothing has changed except for one section, which is a big section, but you don't need to reread the whole policy. We're focusing on water trips. Meredith Higgins really brought this to our attention, that neighboring districts had some guidelines and restrictions on water-based field trips, just for the obvious increased risk and danger. And that we really had put no limits other than the need for a superintendent to approve what, even that many of these field trips didn't even go to superintendent approval. So we've been working on it for a long time. It's been kicking around policy for 3-4 months. We've been getting input from Jeff Owen, who runs the canoe team, as well as some field-based water sampling for his science classes, and from Chad Kirkpatrick, who, as you know, probably runs the outing clubs at the middle school. It's not done. In fact, the document in the policy committee folder has some recent comments from Jeff that he's, got concerns. So it's going to go through the policy committee again, but it's far enough down the road. We thought it was time to bring it to the board to have a chance for feedback and a first read. Is this a place where people have mostly read it and want to comment, or would it be helpful if I quickly walk through what's happening here?
We can summarize, frame.
Right, so the section is board policy for field trips or in the water. We decided we need to really break it out. There are a lot of different types and really different rules. So we have the wading in the water one. And basically, mostly it's prohibited except for academic purposes like sampling, some safety restrictions like no waders and things like that. We're banning the ones that are more dangerous, walking across streams, rivers, and oceans. Swimming pools, we're putting some real rules about insurance requirements. Is there a thought on that one?
Sorry, I've just never been on a walking across the ocean field trip.
Well, there's a sad story where a school took students out to Bar Harbor and they walked across the bar and the tide came in on the way back and a child drowned. So this is what's in the back of my mind when I think about that. Yeah.
And just to be clear, they're not banned, they have rules down, like.
Well, most of them have rules, but specifically, walking in the intertidal and rivers is banned, actually.
Says it's subject to the rules in 3.
Oh, right, subject to the rules in 3, which basically means having lifeguards.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, thank you, good clarification. 3 is swimming pools. They either have to be insurance or be one of the local towns, well-trusted actors that we know. They have to have a lifeguard ratio that conforms with state standards and a pretty heavy permitting process. Field trip permission slip process with parents, recognizing that they know they're going on a water field trip and that they're giving permission explicitly for their student to swim, and giving us the parental, recognizing this is not perfect, parental quick assessment of how good a swimmer their kid is. Open water swimming adds a buddy system on top of the lifeguarding. Kayaking and canoeing. This is already kind of rippled through the canoe team, but there's state law in place that this requires either a main guide or a ETL, expeditionary teaching learner that has a certification. This is required by law, so we're putting that in place, requiring life jackets. Some additional guidances, some of which is still being under discussion. And then there's riding a boat, and we're basically saying that it has to be Coast Guard certified and insured. So these are, you can see there, well, a lot of cases, a lot of details. We're getting into the details about what types of life jackets can be worn.
How deep you can go in the water.
Yeah, I mean, there's some real conversation. You know, that's actually one of the contentious ones is how deep to go in the water. And I think, you know, we have teachers say, well, we're out there sampling water and we go in deeper than 9 inches. And we're trying to walk a line here. We don't want to shut down current programs that are not unsafe, but we really didn't have a lot of guidance. Old Town only really addressed the canoeing kayaking example, and Bangor had a much more restrictive policy than we have. So we're trying not to, you know, this is not the most restrictive policy we could implement, but we're trying to strike a balance.
You mentioned these island schools?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure the island schools have a different policy, and their parents probably have a different comfort level with kids on a boat without a life jacket working in the lobster boat. So this is why we're bringing it to the board now. There's still some tweaking to do, but we want feedback. You know, we're trying to strike a safety, educational experience balance, and we want feedback if you think we're being too prohibitive or too permissive. And students are welcome to weigh in too. Noah?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's like this is a tough thing. Like I like lots of sampling water, and I'm terrified of water. So I appreciate the thought in here. I mean, I have a bunch of questions, and so what I'm starting with, it says in still waters and it says pond and stream. Does that mean like
Streams needs to be struck. That's one of the comments that's out there right now.
Okay.
Probably ponds and lakes would be a better way to phrase that.
But then okay, but then if it's like just a narrow stream you're walking across, like the one by Asa or something, it's like
yeah, you're right. This needs to get workshopped in policy. What exactly is a brook allowed, but a stream's not allowed? There's probably some versions of streams that are reasonable and some that aren't.
Yes. So okay, and then yeah, I guess other question I have, like the PFD standards, like are we sure all 3 are we want, or do we want just the couple best ones for like I don't know, for it's I don't know if we feel comfortable with just those PFDs that I think aren't self-writing. I don't know. That's my
Right, so
question.
the 3s are the vests that you see people who are, for example, water skiing or canoeing or kayaking wear. And they are not self-righting. If you fall in the water and you're unconscious and you're face down, they're not gonna flip you over.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you know, I think Jeff Owen had a pretty strong opinion about this, and I understand why. If you're out on the canoe team, you're not gonna wear a more restrictive PF2 that's making it hard to paddle. And, you know, the odds that you're gonna get knocked unconscious and fall face down in the water while you're canoeing is different than if you're in a, you know, large boat. But yeah, you're right. Those are the lines we're talking about. So the thought was to include all types, including the non-self-writing.
Okay. And then you mentioned intertidal. I guess I'm missing what are we saying about intertidal, which is the zone, which is theoretically
So
you could not touching
we
water.
originally had intertidal up under number 1, right? Like up to 9 inches. But based on feedback from one teacher, you know, the intertidal is a much different place than wading into a pond that's 9 inches deep. So the intertidal actually falls right now into 2, right? It's part of the ocean, and there's no specific carve out for the intertidal elsewhere. So it requires lifeguards.
So the intertidal, so if you're walking in the below high tide line, you need
But if you're walking in the water.
Well, so this is my question, right? I mean, especially that Bar Harbor case and like other, I mean, I do teach in the intertidal zone. We, in theory, don't touch the water, but have been in a lot of really hairy situations where suddenly we were in the water and we didn't mean to be, you know, like, and the intertidal can be a really rocky place.
Yeah.
So I guess I wonder about being more careful about knowing the tides and having that level of protection. I've had some really scary situations with my students, so
So
not
you would define the ocean to include the intertidal, even if it's dry at the moment.
Yes.
I could get on board with that. I don't think we have a lot of activity in the intertidal just because of its distance, but yeah, I could get on board with that. I agree in terms of, I also, we're both ecologists. I've led field trips in the intertidal. I've led field trips in rivers, and field trips where we go up mountains scare me some, but field trips where there people are in rivers and the intertidal scare me more. So
Yeah.
Okay, that's all helpful feedback. Other thoughts?
I just wanted to know if there were any existing or proposed field trips or activities that would be directly impacted by this change.
Yeah, there are, well, the canoeing teams and the outing trips at the middle school. I mean, we've been working with people to try and make sure that it's inclusive of those. Some of the water sampling that's done, I know like Jess Archer does it with the vernal pools. I know Jeff Owen does it. I don't know, probably some other people are doing it. I know a lot of people working with Wabanaki tribes are doing it.
Great field trip this year.
Yeah.
That would be impacted. Any field trip, like often senior class goes somewhere to swim on their trip, that would be impacted. Like you have to have a lifeguard, have to be the ratios.
So when you say impacted, does this mean this would be at a level that we are not currently meeting if this was policy, and we would make it harder to do these things?
Some of them.
Some cases, yes, some cases, no. Some cases we're already doing this. Some cases it's like, yeah, that probably should have had a little more of an eyeball on it. And this is why we're putting a policy in place. Doesn't mean they're not going to happen, just means there's a higher standard being held.
And I think some of them would be hard to make happen.
And it may prevent some trip conceivably.
Yeah, and I hate that idea of limiting opportunities, because I think taking risks and going out there is important. But so I wonder what we can do to support this in a sort of proactive way, like to make it more easy to like, okay, we need a lifeguard because we're going out there, and having some way to like facilitate that, so that trips don't get prevented, and we're sort of like proactive about helping that happen.
Well, I mean, people already put field trip budgets in. Now that we have a policy, it'll make it easier to have clarity about what the actual budget would need to be. So I don't think we're preventing. In fact, we're probably encouraging people to go budget for a lifeguard if that's what's going to need to be had.
And do we have like, I mean, even just having a throw ring, like just for like, the intertidal, or even if we don't have a full lifeguard requirement, but having that available to anyone to borrow, I think, vernal pool or whatever, it's a good idea.
To have some safety equipment. Yeah, we could look at that. Marissa?
I just, sorry, had a question about lifeguards. Are the lifeguard requirements that we have to hire outside of the area, or if a teacher is lifeguard trained, like I just thought about the senior trip, as I know plenty of seniors who work at the pool and are lifeguard trained. I would assume they would meet the requirement for a ratio of lifeguards to people swimmers.
I mean, the way it's written right now, they would have to be certified, so yeah. Red Cross lifeguard, and they have to be working as a lifeguard. So if they're having in their senior trip and swimming with their friends, it wouldn't count. If they wanted to volunteer to sit on the shore and behave as a lifeguard, at least to my read of this, that would probably count if they're certified.
So the way it says it's school staff or chaperones.
Okay, so it would be staff, so students wouldn't be included, but staff could be included.
I just meant like if it was a volunteer opportunity for seniors to go with a middle school classroom. Like to the vernal pools if you needed an extra.
We should discuss that. I guess, right now that's precluded, but I don't know that I would necessarily think it should be.
Well, and that happens with the 8th grade pool trip. There were some of our students over there working the pool party because they work for the town. But that's because we're using the town pool, not because we've hired the town.
I'd probably say we, Marissa, probably have 5, 6, 7. Just students are certified lifeguards.
It's not great. It's my grade. Yeah, just in the juniors and seniors, that was around 10. That would be interesting.
This is all good feedback. This is where we have 2 reads. Any other thoughts? All right, so we need to vote to recognize the read, knowing that it's gonna go back to policy committee and come back, and yes, it's 8 o'clock, so students should feel free to dismiss. We'll go ahead and vote. Jake? Kevin? Aye. Mark?
Aye.
Noah?
Aye.
I also vote aye. We got a little echo vote there. That was good. Appreciate that. It's always nice to have an endorsement from the student.
Did Noah persuade that vote?
Yeah, I don't know if it was a totally independent, free conscience vote, but
No snack if you don't vote.
Let's see. So now we're on to the OMS construction application consulting contract, which you have, Meredith put it on the table as a supplement to the packets.
Have worked with Haley Ward back and forth on this contract and received this latest version we're looking at tonight, last evening. The contract is for slightly higher than we budgeted. It's for a total of 35,000, but that also does not include some consulting costs that we actually asked them to include in their services to us because we just needed a comfort level with a bit more experience, but we wanted to stay with Haley Ward. So they are working with a consultant who we've worked with previously from down in the Portland area to just help advise them on the project and help make a more competitive application for us. And so I anticipate that those consultant dollars could add around 5,000 more. And so we probably, you know, you're signing this with a little bit of an unknown around the consultant dollars, but I'm not sure if we should put a ceiling on that and we can come back if it exceeds that. I was trying to press for more details. I'm not sure if I got more details in the email I did for that. Brian, what are your thoughts on that piece?
Yeah, it's a little open-ended. We really had somebody we wanted to work with because we worked with them before and they were traveling out of phone range, and that's what's kind of delaying things. I think we should just I think the fee that I remember being quoted was reasonable. I'm thinking we should do it like not to exceed 45,000 or maybe 50,000 just to be safe, but
Yeah, that would be safe. I think 45 would be fine, but 50 would give us plenty of wiggle room.
yeah. So I would make a motion to authorize the superintendent to execute the contract with Haley Ward for middle school construction application services, not to exceed 50,000. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or questions? Kind of exciting to me, right? The one big hole that we never addressed is the middle school, and
like this application is our best shot to get it right.
it's our best shot. If this doesn't get right, we're gonna have to talk to the taxpayers, which I really don't want to do. So I think I'm all in to spend the money we have to spend to get this.
One shot.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead and vote. Jake?
Aye.
Kevin? Aye. Mark?
Aye.
Noah?
Aye.
I also vote aye, so it passes. Buried my agenda while I was looking at something else. New course approval. So this went through the curriculum committee and it was unanimous, hardly any questions. But Meredith I don't know who's gonna introduce it.
Yeah, I'd ask Susan and or Meredith wants to explain ELOs a little bit.
Sure. So ELOs are extended learning opportunities. We would like to have that be a half credit course at OHS through JMG. So JMG would be the teacher that does the course grade, and would also help place students in mostly offsite opportunities to do career explorations. On occasion, there's like Zoom interviews with people in the field and things like that. So those 40 hours that are detailed aren't always offsite, but that's what we're striving for, 40 hours of that career experience. This format really gives some structure to how we can provide those extended learning opportunities for our students. And for example, we have kids that are teacher assistants down in ASA right now and doing an excellent job and doing that during a study hall and not getting credit for that. So this would provide a format and structure for those students to receive an elective credit, as well as open up all kinds of pathways and opportunities for kids. I think Angie Gatala has done a nice job of outlining what some of those possibilities are, but it's hard to match this directly to some of the main learning results because it really depends on what the student is interested in.
Great. So I would make a motion so this is coming to us under the context of course approval. I would make a motion to approve the new course of OHS JMG Extended Learning Opportunities. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion or questions? Go ahead and vote. Jake?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Noah?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Carries 5-0. Subcommittee reports, policy, you saw what we worked on. Next meeting will be focused on finishing up the field trip water policy part and policy FF about naming of parts of facilities. UTC?
Have not met since we last met as a board.
Okay, Spruce?
Either have we, but we have a meeting next week, Thursday.
Okay. Curriculum subcommittee, the two topics were the ELOs, which you just saw, and the health, which Susan gave us an update on. Wellness.
Oops. Yeah, no, we haven't met.
Welcome, town councilors. DEI leadership. We haven't met since last time. Susan, talked about encouraging people to look at how much is happening. Strategic plan team, same basic place, right? There was a convergence on our values and student learner and mission vision statement and 6 goals. Those 6 goals have gone off to the admin team to kind of work through some of the details. Meredith and I are going to try and clean them up into a tight, clean version, which is going to come back to the strategic plan committee, which includes all the board, including Dorsa, in early April. And we will begin taking feedback on what's something close to a final. There might be still some discussion about whether we have a data section or some, less important sections, but the core of mission, vision, values, student as a learner, and goals we'll have a draft version at April, which is exciting. So we're on track to complete that with board approval, feedback cycle and board approval in June. Anything else on that, Meredith? Next up, the annual budget meeting is May 21st. One board member has a definite conflict with that night, and another board member, me, has a possible conflict still to be determined that night. So there was a thought that we should move it back just one night to Monday, the 20th. As you all know, this is the meeting. This is like a good old fashioned New England town meeting. People can show up and vote to amend the budget, and they can vote to add things to the budget. They can vote to drop things from the budget. And obviously with how large the budget increase is this year, there's who knows, but people could show up and slice a big chunk out of the budget, and then we deal with that. So I think it's important that we have our full representation and able to make our case for what we want, whatever the board decides we're putting forward. So there's a proposal to move it to the 20th. Is that something that works for people?
I'm free.
Yeah.
Jake, Noah?
I do have something from 6 to 7 on that day. I don't know if we are wedded to the 6 to 7 slot, but I don't know.
Don't have to be.
If that's the best time.
Would we move it to 5 or 7? Not sure what would get a better turnout. Probably 7.
I'm fine
There's
with
no
that.
guarantee if it's at 5, there's no guarantee it's 10 by 6. Usually we are, but
Right,
in the past.
it could drag on. So it seems like 7 o'clock on the 20th.
I mean, I don't want, if that's not too late, I don't want to like.
I think it's a moot point or a debatable point, whether 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock would get a better turnout, so I don't think that's a problem.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to go anyway.
The old days where these meetings went 2 or 3 hours, I wouldn't necessarily prefer that, but I think 7 o'clock is workable. I would make a motion that we move our annual budget meeting to May 20th at 7 PM. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Go ahead and vote. Jake?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Noah?
Aye.
I also vote aye, so that will be changed and we'll be posting that soon enough. Any future agenda items? The floor is open for public comment. Seeing no public comment, our next meeting is April 9th, 6 PM in the library and on Zoom. Other than the things already brought up during the budget discussion, is there any requests for information and follow-up? No, okay. I would make a motion to go into executive session under 1 MRSA 405-6D, discussion of labor negotiations. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I know we're gonna have to send you a link so you can join us. We'll go ahead and vote. Jake?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Noah?
Aye.
I also vote aye. And we will not take any votes except for adjournment after we come out of executive session. So people are welcome to sign off.
Good to see everybody. Good to see you. Take care.
No, it's always thinking of pants. When you don't see the executive session until the.
Oh, yeah, I didn't see that.
Like,
Oh, 8:16.
Not gonna be a short meeting, you know.
It shouldn't be too bad.
No.
Sending this to all of you, just so you can taste anyway. So no, I just sent you a Google Meet.
Did you then turn?
My side was off. It is on your side, but I didn't know that I was getting rain in the head.
We kill a lot of trees. So we can make papers organized.
Oh, it's the utility.